I have a special treat for you today. We are going to be discussing the new book I just finished reading, Ask a Matchmaker by Maria Avgitidis, Maria the Matchmaker. It's a book about finding love, and I just finished listening to the entire audiobook, and I'm pleased to say I learned a lot, and that's pretty rare for me because I've read a ton of books about dating. Now, I just want to preface this by saying it has been a rough week for me. I feel quite overwhelmed by all the dating, the kind of trial and error of meeting new men. And so I just wanted to really kind of make myself feel a little better. So I went and got a massage today, and then I just prepared for a date with myself. So today I'm having a date with me and all of you and sharing this wonderful new audiobook. Cheers! So first I'm going to give an overview of some of the main things that I learned from the book, and then we're going to go chapter by chapter. I really recommend that you read this book, especially if you're a woman, ages really anywhere between 20 to 80 or 90 or 100 and you're feeling frustrated with dating. Maria is very clear. She gives really practical tips and really meets you where you are in terms of dating. She talks about just really realistic, easy things that you can do. She also gives tips about how to navigate relationships once you get into them, how to decide if you need to break up with someone, and even she goes all the way to marriage and the value that marriage brings, using her own amazing marriage to George as an example. My top 3 takeaways from the book. First of all, the big surprise is that I really went into this book thinking that I needed to be less picky when I was dating. And I left the book feeling like I actually need to be more selective when I'm dating. Maria has a whole chapter about what she calls your picker, which I find kind of funny because it sounds a little bit like your pecker to me. But essentially, the point is that I think that as I've been going through all of these dating apps, I've been trying to say, oh, I'm too picky. I'm only looking for people who are physically attractive. And, but actually the problem, like I was kind of looking for anyone who was nice. Like basically anyone nice, I'll go out with them. And what Maria says is that you should actually get really selective about who you want to date and define those qualities really clearly. So I want someone who's interested in being a life partner. If they're not interested in that when we're messaging on the dating apps, they're not going to be interested in it in any foreseeable time. And as someone who's been going out with a lot of guys who kind of disappeared after the second or third date and said they weren't even ready for a relationship or were avoidant or maybe never wanted to get married, I really feel like I just need to nip that in the bud and start being really selective. Apparently, there's a statistic that 25% of men in New York City are avoidant personality. So going forth in these dating apps, I'm just going to be much more selective about who I'm dating. The second thing that I took away is that when you are dating the right person, it's going to be easy to communicate what you need. So I think that I've been going into a lot of dates feeling like I need to be the perfect person, and that if I make a mistake or if I communicate something awkwardly or if I say, hey, I don't want to sleep with you until we get to know each other better, then that person is going to run away. But Maria's point, and I really trust her because she set up over 5,000 dates and tons of marriages, that the guy who is also interested in something long-term, in partnership, in family, he is not going to feel weird when you say, hey, let's get to know each other a little better before we have sex. He's going to feel fine about that. Or if you say to that guy, hey, I feel more comfortable if you text me every single day, the right guy is not going to be weirded out by that. He's going to want to adjust so that you're going to like him and enjoy being around him. So that was another thing, which is, I feel like even sometimes I feel a little bit annoyed myself that I still am growing, but I feel like just communicating is a good thing. And sometimes when you start communicating in the beginning, it can feel awkward, but as you have more practice, you can grow. And kind of alongside that issue of communication, another thing I took from the book is how to navigate my anxious attachment style. So, one of the exercises that Maria gives in the book is to set a timer for a minute and think about all the qualities that you imagine your future partner having. 1 minute, and then set another timer and write down all the qualities that you bring to the relationship. And once you've written down those qualities, you can come into a relationship with confidence. So, in I am bringing to a relationship, I'm kind, I'm caring, I'm sensual, I love to communicate, I care about personal growth and self development. That's a really exciting thing for the right person. They're going to really enjoy those characteristics. And so, it's okay if something doesn't feel right for me to communicate it. I know that in the past, I felt really guilty when a guy kissed me and I wasn't really feeling the attraction yet. I couldn't say no because I was worried I was gonna hurt his feelings. And I think that's definitely related to my anxious attachment style. I really have this intense fear of rejection. Even though I've done a lot of therapy around it, I think that what's needed now is just for me to practice finding people who are interested in something long term, and then just gently practicing when something feels off or uncomfortable to me, or if I need something, just saying that thing. Sometimes it's even if I'm even scared to invite a guy to do something or to ask if he wants to do a second date, just because I'm afraid of that rejection. But I think I'm really going to get better at expressing my needs and communicating. That's something that also Mina Yang talks a lot about when she was on the podcast, is just communication. It's funny how someone who is very articulate in life, that can all fall apart in dating. Although I will say, with some mentors and advisors that I admire for my tech startup, sometimes I'm not capable of communicating negative things to them that I don't appreciate about the way they interact with me. So I think this will have an impact on all aspects of my life. Okay, so the third thing, as you can already see, is easy. She says wear green on a first date. So I got this from the secondhand store. I mean, I feel smoking hot in it. It's beautiful dress, and I've been encouraging all of you to shop secondhand because it really helps children. There's 130 million children in child labor, and it's also just fast fashion uses up just tons and tons of water. I think it's 20 gallons for just one pair of jeans. This is just such an easy way to feel good, save money. Okay, I digress. So Maria talks about wearing green on a first date because green is a color that means go. It's inviting. And I will say, I have another green dress I've been wearing around, and people have been approaching me on the street. That's never happened to me before in Croatia. And so far, I have a 100% track record of being asked on second dates wearing green. And I love the color green, so it's perfect. I also got these green earrings after I read what Maria said about green. If you're a man, apparently a lilac is the color to go, or a nice salmon pink for dates. So I always thought, you want to wear a smoking hot red on a first date, but I think the point Maria was trying to get across is that can even be a little bit intimidating. And it's a great color if you're at a conference or something like that, but maybe not so much for a first date. All throughout the book, there's a recurring theme of building community around you. And this is just really so relevant right now. There's so much isolation happening in our society, and it's impacting all the areas of our life. Republicans and Democrats aren't talking to each other. There's a mental health epidemic among teens who are getting pulled into social media. We feel lonely, and dating is really hard when you don't have friends around to support you. The other takeaway from the book, and Maria didn't really kind of say this outright, but she talks about the time it takes to get to know someone. There's a whole book about that being 12 dates. We'll get to that. And I kind of wish that I had more male friends just being able to get to know people without the pressure of, is this kind of the person for me or not? Do we have to kiss or not? Just that time for that connection to grow. Yeah, so those are the biggest things that I'm leaving with from this book is really get more clear on what I want in a partner. I know I've done a lot of exercises before, but I want to really even get more clarity on that. Wear green for sure and learn how to communicate better. And just, that's just a process of healing my anxious attachment. And I think it's a chicken and egg sort of situation. The more you communicate clearly, the more you get better at it. And the right person is going to embrace that and have no trouble responding to your needs. All right, so let's dive in chapter by chapter. I listened to this book on audio, which was lovely. Maria is she's so grounded and authentic. And it's just amazing how full this book is of every single tip you ever needed to know. All right, so in the first chapter, she talks about how she became a matchmaker. You might know or you might not know that Maria is a fourth-generation matchmaker. Her grandma was a matchmaker, and Maria is completely different. Matchmaking used to be a much more simple affair where people would just match each other in the village. They would go on one date, then they'd be married, done and done. Her grandmother would earn something like a fish. Maria became a matchmaker because she majored in international relationships. She started hosting weekly events and just naturally she started setting up people. Then she got paid to do it, and the rest is history. Now she is the premier matchmaker of the world in New York City. All right. And so now what was interesting is then she dived into online dating apps. Now, the really key point for me in this chapter on dating apps was how there's just too many people to swipe on. And when you have this volume of people, it creates this intense FOMO that you're just missing the next best thing. So for me, who's someone who very much suffers from FOMO, you just are kind of swiping and swiping and swiping to the point of exhaustion, and you just can't choose. You get this enormous choice fatigue. So later on in the book, she actually recommends limiting yourself to, I think, 50 swipes or until you get 5 matches per day. That's your limit. There's the story, I think the famous story of kind of going into a store and trying to buy a pair of jeans when there are so many jeans. She also gave the analogy of her grandfather walking into a watch store and there were just a million different watches he couldn't choose. And then he went to a store with fewer watches and found the perfect fit. Now, the thing that she started talking about also is how dating changed in the pandemic. So what happened, according to Maria, she's done a lot of research. I mean, it was really incredible to watch her explain the whole history of dating from when she dates to when the bicycle was invented and women could travel around and discover the world, meet new people, which led to the women's movement, but also, and then dating apps, and then the pandemic being kind of a key moment where women used the time being single to develop themselves, and men became increasingly isolated, joined these kind of incel maniverse realms, and their mental health really suffered. She didn't go into too much detail about why that happened to men versus women, but I think it's a really fair point, and at least it made me feel inspired to see how can we support these men in getting back into the community after kind of starting to be more isolated. All right. What I really thought was interesting here, she highlighted how as a matchmaker, through different points in history, there's these key defining issues. And what we saw before the last election was a key differentiator between people is where they fell on the spectrum in terms of the current president of the United States, who I call he who shall not be named. I think you all can guess my opinion. Now, Maria talks about this as being a huge divider. I mean, people writing on their profile, I cannot date a liberal, I cannot someone who would vote for this person, and that you just cannot come to an agreement there in terms of, so politics really does play a role ultimately because it's a signal of values. And Maria suggested that the next defining issue is going to be climate change. Now, I really thought it was interesting that this was characterized as a dividing value in the book, because I see it less of a value than more of, at least for a well-educated man, a sign of character. Climate science is very simple. It's not complicated. CO2 rises in the air, burns a hole in the atmosphere, the sun shines through it, the ice melts, the water rises, we're too hot, the ecosystem gets disrupted. To me, this is not something that someone who has if you have even a minute degree of curiosity, if at all, if you have any kind of analytical capacity in your brain, it's impossible to think that this is not a real thing and to be scared about how it's going to impact our children. So if I hear that someone doesn't believe in climate change, I don't not want to date them because they don't believe in climate change. I don't want to date them because I think this is a closed-minded, ignorant person who doesn't care about children, or who just decides to say, oh yeah, we're all screwed, there's nothing we can do about. Very negative, pessimistic. I've been really concerned about climate change since I learned about it in geology class when I was 16. It's not something that is a debate for me, and when I hear that there's an issue like this that could make things extremely difficult for our children, that's already direly impacting underrepresented groups, I just want to do everything I can to stop it. For me, that's not value, that's kind of common sense. Now, I compare that to an issue like abortion. I am pro-choice. However, I understand that there are people who very, very much believe that a fetus is a live human being with feelings, that God wants that on the earth from the moment of conception. I understand that's more of a value. I don't see that as a bad person who doesn't understand science. I see that as a differing point of view that I want to talk about, that I want to change. I want to protect the right of women to have autonomy over their bodies. But I don't see that as a value. I see that as a value. For me, climate change is indicator of a poor character. Okay, back to the book. I thought it was really interesting that Maria said this is going to come to the fore, and I hope that it does, and I hope that we find better ways to communicate with people about it so it's not so divisive as the current president of the United States. Okay, so the other thing that she talked about, which was so helpful to me, was compatibility. I've been talking to a lot of matchmakers, and I usually hear the following. Basically, you have to find someone who shares your values. So someone who wants marriage, someone who wants kids, someone, who shares my values. I talked a little bit with Melissa about politics, and for me, politics is more of how open-minded are you, how intellectually curious are you, than whether you're Republican or Democrat. The idea that Maria introduces in the book is that there are these 4 personality types. And these personality types came from Match.com. Dr. Helen Fisher. So she created these compatibility types. So there's a builder, explorer, that's me, director, and negotiator. And so what was really funny about this is, for me, I was very clearly identified with the explorer. So the explorer just is always wanting new experiences, is spontaneous, is artsy, and really the guiding value of the explorer is wanting to be happy all the time. So if I'm not happy, something really is off. And the explorer, because they're always wanting to try new experiences, does very poorly with the builder. The builder is very rule-oriented, wants things to done in a certain way. You can think of an accountant. Then you have the negotiator, which I didn't really pay that close attention to. It's kind of a mediator type, very analytical. And then the director, you think of a big CEO of a company, someone who's running their own business, really organized about getting things done. And so what surprised me is that Maria said that explorers tend to go best with other explorers. Now, I always thought as a chatty, lively person, I would do better with a quiet person. Or some of the matchmakers I talked to said, oh, you're a star. There can't be two stars in a relationship. So you need to find someone who's kind of not a star. But I actually really enjoy being with people like my uncle who are spontaneous, who explore, who like trying out new experiences, who gravitate towards happiness. And so this is actually a really useful definer for me. I never thought about compatibility that way. Apparently, the builder and so the builder goes really well with other builders. Like imagine, here I am getting ready for my date. All my clothes are sprawled everywhere. Someone says, hey, when are you leaving Croatia? I don't know. Maybe April. Where are you going? Maybe Japan, maybe Palo Alto. I'm not sure. This is just my personality. And someone who likes rules and organization does not do well with that personality type. Now, in addition, so that was a big revelation for me. In addition to that, Maria talks about other things that you need to be aligned on. So she put there's 5 things. Hopefully I can remember them all right now. The bottom of the list is physical, which is important. Like I love physical touch. It's going to be very difficult for me to be with someone who's not cuddly, who doesn't touch. We really need to be aligned that way. So there's physical, spiritual, intellectual, financial, and emotional. Emotional and financial. So these are designed to help you fix your picker. And to be quite honest, I don't really remember what she said was the most important one. I think it was emotional, though. So, emotional compatibility. That is something I need to really look into a little bit more deeply because I can't remember it. And that's always a good sign that that's an area that needs more focus. Them all. I think my biggest takeaway was, again, what am I looking for in these dating apps? When you go to a dating app, you're so focused on how somebody looks, but the physical is number 5. If emotional is number 1, I would have to say I need to be compatible. I need to be able to communicate my feelings and for them to be received. And for the other person, I need for them, when I compliment them, for them to have joy, for them to share what they're feeling as well, and to be, kind of aware about their feelings and able to communicate them. So, yeah, that's important. All right. So then she has this whole amazing chapter on, I think my picker is broken. How do I fix it? This is just so revelatory. Basically, Maria thinks that most people are not too picky. We're just not really picky about the right things. One thing I found really interesting is she talked about matching people who came from the same spiritual tradition, because she had a client who wasn't connecting with people on kind of a soul level. And he said he wanted to date any religion, and he wasn't, but she matched him with a non-practicing person outside his faith, and they just got along incredibly well because there's all this shared culture. So it made me got to thinking that, I've been thinking a lot about my Jewish heritage, even though I'm not Jewish, and feeling like there are a lot of things about Jewish people, commitment to social justice, intellect, sense of humor, that resonate quite deeply with me, just being kind of going back generations of Jews. Now, on the other hand, I also have this connection to European culture, to French, to Greek culture, that kind of warmth. And so that's something I could consider as well. I'm technically 55% Ukrainian, and I had such a lovely connection with the Ukrainian guest on the show. Okay, I have so much to say about this book. I didn't even realize how much I had to say. I hope that some of this is interesting for you. So I really recommend checking out, really paying close attention to the picker chapter and think about how, you can refine what you are looking for. So it's not that you're too selective, it's just you're not selective about the right things. And I'm going to try to be doing more of a deep dive on that myself. All right, then Maria shares the incredibly amazing story of how she met her husband. She really reevaluated what selection criteria she had. She put a post out on Facebook. She invited all her friends to her birthday and told them what she wanted. And then she thought of her two friends who had marriages that she admired and asked them to ask her out the next time they went out. And she went out with them, even though they lived in an entirely different city. Anyway, I won't spoil the whole story for you, but it's an amazing story. And I think it shows her method really worked for her. So that's great. I mean, I have sent an email to my entire list. I've written manifests. I've asked my friends to introduce them. I've made lists of my friends' husbands. And it hasn't really worked for me, but maybe I feel like I need to change my manifesto. So then there's this whole chapter on how to manifest your partner. It's very practical. So if you're not into woo-woo things, she really gives a clear direction on how to, basically you're just getting clear on the characteristics that you want. Wants children, marriage, consistent, kind, loving. And so then when you go into those dates, you can actually see if that person measures up. And this segues really nicely into the 12-date rule method. So basically, in a nutshell, Maria suggests that you go on 12 dates before you have sex. A date can be going out with each other, having any phone call or video call that's over 20 minutes, because essentially you know nothing about this person, so you need 12 dates to get to know them. And if you're like me, the second you have sex, it's just everything's over. Hormones take over. I'm anxious. I think I'm in love with people who are totally the wrong fit for me. I mean, even kissing is kind of a challenge. So this is a really good tip, waiting 12 dates. And again, Maria says the right person is going to have no problem with 12 dates because they're looking for a partnership. So I do think this is going to be a bit challenging for me. My one boyfriend, long-term boyfriend, I did actually wait, I think 3 or 4 weeks before we had sex. So it does work. Now, but I think that because I do love intimacy and touch, I'm also going to be kind of exploring other ways to meet people and get to know them. But that's a hard one, but I think I can make it work. I always start to feel kind of impatient, like, "Oh no, I'm getting older. How can I wait for 12 dates?" But what I've done in the past hasn't worked for me. Then there's a whole great section on how to make the apps work. Maria is extremely specific about how to use the apps. She has this 50 swipes, 5 matches rule, being really intentional about matching your criteria with those people. She also has a whole section on how to take great photos. She's incredibly specific about how you ask your friend to take photos, what kind of photos are good. The great news is that because of AI, people are really appreciating more authentic photos, so you don't have to worry about it being really retouched or something like that. But just full body pics, things that are fun. You can crop your friends out if you want. Okay, so how do I meet people in real life? The message here is just having community is a great thing in and of itself. Try to go to at least 2 events a week. Organize an event if you don't go to events. If you're a woman who only goes to women's yoga class, try some type of a men event and just say yes, yes, yes. Whenever people invite you out, say yes. When I get more specific about the kind of guy who I think would be a good fit for me, I am going to think about where he would hang out as well. Okay, so then there's another amazing section. It's entirely devoted to how to date, what to ask on the first date, how many days somebody should wait before texting you or not. It's a little bit, and Maria's very open about this. Some of these tips are heteronormative. Basically, if a guy doesn't text you within 3 days, that's not really a guy that's serious about a partnership. Um, the guy should organize the second date. He should ask you on the second date for sure. You shouldn't go for more than 2 drinks on the first date, sit next to each other, wear a stunningly beautiful green dress, stuff like that. It's so specific. So if you just need some practical tips on how do I actually date, chapter 10 is for you. She gives a whole relationship roadmap, moving from 12 dates to when people should be talking about getting more serious to getting engaged. And then there's a really useful chapter, which I really wish I had access to when I was going through troubles with my ex. I know some of you watching the show are trying to decide whether or not you want to stay with your partner. Some of you have just broken up. For some reason, a bunch of my friends just went through really difficult breakups now. And I really want you all to read this chapter 12. Maria just gives such specific questions about how to evaluate if a relationship is a good fit for you or not, exactly what questions to ask your partner, and then how to move on after you break up. It's wonderful. And then there's a whole chapter, which I was kind of amazed about, is once you're together, once you're married, how do you make it work? Date night is a must. Maria is a big advocate of scheduling sex, which sounds really, the way she described it sounds really sexy, the way she plans it out with her husband and gets excited about it. And I was, at one point I was kind of overwhelmed because I've had so much difficulty getting into a healthy relationship. I said, oh my gosh, I'm just still in the dating phase. How do I even get to date 4? And now I have to think about how to navigate this whole relationship. I'm not going to learn that until I'm 150, but I need to calm down, remind myself. In an essence, in a nutshell, Maria's book is very grounded, super evidence-based, really kind, compassionate. As a woman in my 40s who's read, I feel like every single book about dating, Make Your Move, Attached, How to Not Die Alone, Calling in the One, Love Addiction, you name it. Great books, but I feel like I've read everything. I did get some really specific new insights here that I'm excited to try. It's going to start off, I think, by getting a whole lot clearer about my manifest. I think it's still a struggle for me. I have a lot of FOMO around my manifest. I'm going to write out these qualities in a man, and it's going to close me in a box so I don't see the great guy when he comes in. Or alternately, I'm going to leave something really important out, and then I won't know to manifest that. So I think that's really an area I want to focus on some more, talk to experts, get super clear about that, and then really hold myself accountable for being selective. On one side, I feel a little bit sad reading this book that I didn't have access. I don't feel like I had even the openness of mind to really receive these words of wisdom when I was in my 30s. I think that I was very much still wanting to find, there were a couple guys that I dated that if I'd known it was okay to not really be kissing them or intimate on the first couple dates, I would have given them more of a chance to get to know them. And I didn't. I don't really know that those were the right guys for me. Another takeaway for life in general is that I can tend to favorize quantity over quality. Like if I just swipe through every match in the city or, then I'm going to find someone, but actually swiping through less and being really intentional about it leads better outcomes. In my company, sometimes when I'm trying to sell a new product, I just email 2,000 people and then the results are kind of meh. But last year I decided that there was one company and I really wanted to work with them in a partnership. And actually today they emailed me and they're interested in working. And so I put a lot of focus and energy on that one company that I think would be a really good fit for the work we do. And so I'm excited. It might actually pan out. So that's something that I really need to take into account and remember. I think that this act of quantity, 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 do as much as possible. It's kind of a way of trying to control the situation. It's out of fear, it's out of FOMO. But if you can be really intentional, you can be a lot more effective instead of just kind of, you know, spraying the wall and hope something hits. I don't know. I don't know. That's not really the analogy I mean, but if you're kind of, let's say you're trying to play basketball and you just try to throw a million basketballs instead of aiming really nicely and getting that one basketball in the hole where you want it. So, yeah, so I was sad that I didn't have this book in my 20s and my 30s. I feel like dating is something that we really should learn in school. Funnily enough, Maria doesn't think that you should really be dating people over 25 if you're under 25 because your personality is not fully formed and you shouldn't even worry about dating. You should be worrying about doing well in school. I kind of wish I'd met someone in college, so I'm not sure about that. But I really wish I'd met Maria in my mid-20s. I feel like she could have validated that I was attractive and that where I needed to work on was just do some therapy around my anxious attachment, that I had enough time, and then use these really practical, helpful tips to meet people. And the other thing that I really wish I had was someone kind of encouraging me past that date 1 or date 2 and telling me, just practice being honest, practice communicating. There's time, practice setting boundaries, and the right person will understand. All right, my loves. So if you haven't read it already, I highly recommend checking out Ask a Matchmaker. I've given you some of the highlights, but especially check out the chapter on manifesting. Maria has some really good insights there. If you're just starting to date, you can just go straight to the chapter on how to date, how to work the dating apps, and if you're not sure if the person you're with is a good fit for you, there's just such wonderful questions, a whole list of questions you can ask yourself and can ask your partner that I think will really get you to the right answer because you're wonderful and you can find someone wonderful who fits you or help transform your relationship through better communication techniques like there are in this book. And it's just really reassuring. I trust Maria when she says to use these techniques, that there are men out there who are excited to ask these questions and to engage in a relationship in an intentional way. To me, as I read the end of the book, I could almost barely believe it. A man would actually make the effort to improve the relationship, to change how he communicated with his partner, to have a kind of safe word when her emotions are running high. It's just amazing to me that there are men out there who want to involve and want to invest in relationships, and I'm excited to meet one. So check out Ask a Matchmaker, everyone, and I'll see you all soon.